Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Gelvin Valley, Farming Simulator 15. Wonderful map made by Wild Wild Wes. I think before I do anything else, I'm going to turn on this timer that Eustace Farmer, aka Atomic 67, gave me. One of these days, maybe I won't jump so bad when it goes off. There it is, ticking away. Let's go around to our equipment here. We've been in the middle of rolling this hillside. Yeah, with our 20% damage tractor. Let's get her cranked up. And on to the show. I think we're ready to go. Yeah, field retention. There we go. We have just a little bit left. We're on a tremendously steep slope. So I'm really looking forward to bringing our combine over it when we harvest. Watching the hillside work. Oh, there's a pesky rock, but maybe we'll go through it. Yeah, very good. I wonder about the collisions on that rock. But anyway, looks like we got another large one up here, but a small one that should go under and disappear. Yep, there it goes. And maybe we'll just walk by this larger one here. You know, I was thinking on the way to work this morning, I had this memory come back. Well, I say memory, it's something I hear every now and again at family gatherings. And I looked it up to see what it's actually called. I'll describe it here in a minute. It's got some fancy term, but it's kind of a, what do you call it, a pseudo language, where if you know the rules for it, you can kind of determine what is being said, but other people who might hear it may not know, what's being said. So it's kind of like almost inventing your own language of sorts. And I don't know what made me think about it. It's kind of just, who knows, the silly things that come to mind when a person's driving, trying to go to work. But I thought of it, and it's, I didn't know this until I got married, and so I guess it's something my wife brought to the relationship, but I know her and her sisters. What did they call it? They called it ob. I don't know what else to call it. It's similar to, maybe some of us that are English speaking, hopefully nobody's offended when I say this, but, I think we've all heard of Pig Latin. And, come to find out, some of these pseudo-languages, if you will, there's actually a term that I discovered, it's by Googling it, of course, and almighty Wikipedia, comes along to provide some education. I think it's called something like a cryptolect. That's a cryptolect. And it's defined as a cant or jargon or language of a group often employed to exclude or mislead people outside the group. And then it has several different terms for it, if you will. Cryptolect, argot, A-R-G-O-T, I'm not sure how to say that, pseudo-language, anti-language, or secret language. Well, anyway, I think we all know, or I say all, I shouldn't just assume that. I got to sit here and try to think if I can remember the rules for Pig Latin. That's the one I had heard about, as a kid. And isn't that where you take the letter, like if it's a consonant word, like let's say it's hello, you would take the H and put it at the end of the word and add AY, so it'd be Elohe. Or, like if you're saying the word world, I guess you would go Earled way. And then, like, you could string together whole sentences and try to communicate something, and there's just a lot of a thrown in there on whatever you're trying to communicate. And it might be enough, if English isn't your first language, and you hear an English speaker do that, it might be enough to be confusing to like I say, a non-English speaker. I don't know that it would ultimately fool an English speaker, and who knows what other tricks other languages have. Maybe they could even do something similar. But I think that's the only rule for Pig Latin. It's really kind of simple, and there may be a couple others. Like, yeah, if it's like the word smile, I almost think you take both the first and the second letter SM, so you'd go I'll smay. Maybe there's some others, like if it's a TR sound. But anyway, you ultimately end up adding an AY something to everything. But with my wife and her sisters, they had something called OB. When I got engaged to her, I had never heard of it before. And some of them were pretty good at using it. And basically, you insert ob, that is AB, or the syllable, the sound of it, in front of every syllable, which really takes some thought to do. So, for example, if you want to say the word hello, you would put an ob in front of the first E and then in front of the second O, or in front of the L. So it'd come out habalabo or habalabo. And I gotta say that that's pretty well hidden, even to an English speaker. If somebody's really good at it and they get rattling away at it, you'd probably be pretty hard pressed to figure all that out. I mean, I don't know. It was always difficult for me to try to discern. And, a person really has to think, if you're going to be making a sentence, it's harder than you think. It's one thing to do, maybe to rattle off a simple word, but to make a whole sentence. And then not only that, it's one thing to make a sentence, of course, it's another to comprehend it. And I just remember watching her and some of her sisters, they got pretty good at it over the years. If you wanted to have a side conversation and say something that you didn't want anybody else to know, a lot of times they could revert to ob and do something with it. And then I think of my father-in-law. Word has it that he also knew ob, and when he really wanted to hide something, he would switch to German. I think he speaks a little German, so he would do German ob, and then nobody could dare untangle that. Is there, like I say, I think it's called a cryptolect. And if I was any good at it, I would rattle something off here just to try to dazzle and impress, but I can't impress nobody with anything, so I'm not even going to try. It's enough just to describe it and kind of pick at a couple words, to do that. But, I mentioned like Pig Latin, ob. Put in the comments, is there any other pseudo language, secret language, code language, whatever you call it, that you've heard of or used personally? I don't know. It's just, like I say, the thought came to me when I was driving to work this morning. Why? I can't tell. I mean, what can I say? I'm a knucklehead accountant. But it just came to mind of, a simple device, people have used to kind of almost like hiding in plain sight. I know there's probably others out there. I think I've even seen one in use before, but I don't know what it's called. But it was totally indecipherable. I think it was in a movie I saw a long, long, long time ago. Two girls talking to each other, and of course they had to put the words on the screen so you could tell what they were saying. But it was probably another type of cryptolect or pseudo language. And I don't know, maybe it's just for kicks and giggles and fun, that people would try to do such a thing. But it makes me think too of when it comes to code. It's one of my other pastimes I enjoy is just reading history books. Ever since I got out of school and no longer have to take tests on the silly stuff, I enjoy reading history books and learning of things, particularly, well, agriculture, for example. I mean, that's always had a special place. But World War II in particular, I don't know what it is about it. It's just always held a place of fascination for me. Maybe it's just disbelief that some madman could come along and try to exterminate a race of people, take on the whole world thinking he could win. I don't know. It just fascinates me. Whole bunches of different facets to it. Whether studying what happened in the European theater or over by Japan, down in the islands, whether it's a war on the field, the type, how the soldiers were outfitted, naval battles, you name it, it's all been of interest to me. And a couple stories in there that, just fascinated me. It's my understanding that American Indians were used because their dialect, their manner of speaking was so indecipherable or so little known by other cultures that there was things that it could say in code and the Japanese couldn't figure out what they were saying. And I don't know that they ever did break the code. They would have American Indians in the American Army or whoever was using them, which branch of the service, I don't know, sending communication in code, speaking in their, American Indian dialect, and I don't know, that's pretty cool that something like that could be used. And I gotta say, that's pretty straight up of, American Indians to be willing to do it when, by most accounts, there was a lot of mistreatment of the American Indian population in America over the years. So for them to be willing to help, um, bravo for that. But I suppose at another level, this is their homeland also. So even if they may have reservations against helping, America, it is their homeland too. So it's protecting their interests as well. But I just remember reading about that one time, and I just found it fascinating how languages can be that way. Where some are more easily understood or decipherable by another language or culture versus others. And anybody that studied languages, there are certain ones that are closer to others, and it seems like all of them, without hardly any exception, there's like roots you can connect between them. Maybe you have to go back a ways, but some of them, share more commonality than others, obviously. But I always thought that was interesting about the American Indians and their ability to help America during World War II with code. And code, of course, isn't just, it makes me think of Lua code. Not that kind of code. But it isn't just something you would speak, of course. It makes me think of another code I remember reading about in studying World War II. I think it was called Enigma. Enigma. I seem to recall that's what it was. Maybe someone will let me know in the comments if I'm wrong on that. Oh, get out of there, Rock. But the Germans, I believe, had this super fancy code thing that they would change, like, I don't know, every day, every month, every week. I don't remember what frequency it was. But it was a machine, I think, that would spit out a code or provide the coding system whereby they could communicate with their submarines, for some reason, I kind of think it was more of a naval communication system. Again, I could be wrong on that. That's just what I recall. But I think that sent out information to their ships, the Navy, the submarines of shipping traffic and whatnot. Be here to take out, this merchant ship coming through with whatever. And so there was this guy, I think he was British. I wish I could remember his name. See, I enjoy history and reading it, but I still can't remember. My memory isn't the best. It all depends sometimes, and I haven't read about it recently. But I think there was this British genius and several others, mathematicians and what have you, that figured out eventually the code, the Enigma code. And one of the things I think they did is they captured a German sub, and inside the sub they had a decryptor for Enigma. And I guess the Germans never figured out that, one of the Allies had the decryption mechanism, but that still didn't. They still was a ton they had to figure out as to how it worked. That helped, I think, but they still had to figure out an algorithm, and they set up this huge computer to help run the calculations to figure out, what was being said. And eventually they figured out how to crack the code, and for a significant portion of the war, they were able to tell, what the Nazis were up to in their communications. And another thing that's interesting about that I remember reading is, once you have a tool that tells you what your enemy is communicating, well, the last thing you want to do is to overuse it and let your enemy know that you're onto him. And I remember reading about this, that this was extremely difficult. One impulse you would have is, hey, these guys are trying to take out all of our ships, all of our guys. We want to save and protect all of them. But they couldn't. As I understand it, they literally ran statistical calculations to say how many of or how many ships can we protect before the Nazis will try to figure out that we're onto them. They literally ran statistical calculations to see how much they could get away with. And obviously, probably they tried to protect the most important to the war effort. But it was just interesting that to the lengths they went to, to keep the enemy from figuring out, what they had come up with. And so code, it's just fascinating. I know code is still used to this day, by all those guys that spy on each other and whatever else, that all the governments do to one another, and it's gone high tech. And you look at something like Enigma, and it seems pretty child's play, probably compared to what they have today. But yeah, when I think of Ob and Pig Latin, it's really just a type of code to disguise from others what you're talking about. No different from code that they would have used, even in a war effort. All these rocks. And we'll be along to pick them up. Speaking of rocks, we do have our, up here in 18. Oh yeah, there's definitely fewer little gray dots. Every one of those gray dots is a rock. Actually, it isn't a dot, it's a picture of a rock. So we're taking some of them out, and then we're going to need to come up here with a trailer to grab the rest. And this will be convenient, actually, because I believe the place we get rid of rocks is the same place we take hay. There must be some guy over there interested in purchasing rocks, and we just rented space from the guy who takes the hay, so who knows. So pseudo-language, code, and then obviously there's real language. And shoot, I don't know why I'm on this topic. What language is, I can't remember if I've asked this before, anybody listening to this, what languages do you know? What's your native language versus one that's your second language or third? I'm just a typical American. I know we're widely criticized for not knowing other languages, and I think part of it is we haven't had to, because just think of where I live. Everybody around me for over 1,000 miles in every direction, and more than that, knows English. So we just haven't had to learn other languages, um, even though America is a very multicultural place. I think back to my days of being in school. There was we had a lot of Hispanic folks. We have a lot of Russian people that live in the area. I know we kept a Russian exchange student when I was growing up for a while. He was a real jerk, but that's kind of another story. Um, I don't think anything bad of the Russians on account of him. I think he was just a spoiled rich kid, and those are probably the only type of folks who could afford, to come send their kids to America on exchange. Um, in my high school, let me see here. I think we actually had a number of options. Probably the language offerings they have at a school is going to depend on whether you have teachers available who can speak the language. And in our school, I mean, of course, we add Spanish. That's very common now. We also add French, German, and Russian also. We had a gentleman who spoke Russian. So I think there was 4 languages that we offered. Um, like I say, that's probably pretty rare. I think on an hour my kids go to school, I kind of think Spanish is about the only option. And if you want to do something else, I think you could, but you'd probably have to go to a local community college to do it. Turn on my beacons. And I can't remember if I've related the story of a Russian family that emigrated to the U.S., came to our church. Something tells me maybe I have shared that. But I know it was part of that I was going to college at the time when they came and helped induce me to want to learn another language a little bit. I actually ended up taking 2 years of Russian. And, the old saying, use it or lose it, I mean, it's true. Um, I haven't really had opportunity to use it at all. It was just my freshman and sophomore year in college, where I was taking these classes every day. I really enjoyed it, and it just kind of too bad it didn't fit into my course load. I would have loved to continue it, but I had them. It would have been hard. But I was getting to the point, at the end of 2 years where I was just starting to get decently conversational, where we could sit in a circle and talk about what we did on the weekend, and, to be able to do that, probably would make a Russian person laugh their head off. But, it would have been good enough to do a little bit there, but, well, I tell you, don't keep that up. And there's nothing like traveling to the country and being immersed in it, to learn it for sure. And that's just an opportunity. I've never been to Russia. Might be kind of cool to go there someday, although I doubt whether they want to see Americans at the moment with what's going on in the Ukraine. But I imagine, like most any other country, people are people no matter where you go. And none of us have anything against anyone else. It's more what our government is doing, so-called on our behalf or otherwise. So, is this a road? Yeah, I want to go up here. I don't want to go off the road. What I need to do is go pick up my trailer and take it over there and pick up some rocks. And head back to the main farm. And my beacon's turned off. Oh, there we go. So I got to learn a little bit of Russian. I think some of my siblings took Spanish. I don't think anybody else took anything beyond that. I think my wife took a little Spanish. And it's always impressed me. I think languages come easier to some people than others. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I've always heard, hey, once you learn one language, or excuse me, once you learn a second language, the third and fourth are much easier to learn. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe the exercise of learning an additional language, uh, it is a wrong word, but maybe it warps a person's brain to be able to do it or to figure out a technique to learn it. Um, but like I say, the best technique is probably just to go there, immerse yourself in it, force yourself not to have to be in whatever your native tongue is, and just learn it from the ground up. Kind of like a kid. But there are people who are able to become fluent in something even when they don't go there. And, even as we get to the end of our time here, I'm remembering now my friend Eustace Farmer, Atomic 67, and anybody familiar with his videos knows he had a whole bunch of different characters. He was an awesome storyteller. He did that all the time. And so he had just a boatload of characters, like he could pull them out of a hat or something and use them. And I almost think the episode he had for Gelvin Valley, when the fire happened, one character that he had, I forget the name of it, but it was a Russian guy, and he just sounded brilliant at it because his accent, having been around a few Russian people and having taken it in school, there's a certain accent they have, there's certain ways of speaking that they have, uh, even their shorthand, the way they would talk, the way they would say certain letters or certain phrases. Atomic 67 just had it nailed. So you knew he had to have spent some amount of time around native Russian speakers, and I know as I got to know him a little better, I mean, he told me exactly that Victor, that's what the name of the character was, Victor. Victor spoke Russian. Just the thick, heavy accent. Oh, now I gotta remember how to turn on this. Okay, rock auto loading is off, so let me turn that on. And let's show the rock area. Okay. Speak it up. There, I can try to speak in a Russian accent too. So, I probably should steer for all the dots wherever I see them on the PDA map. Ah, this is so nice. I wish we'd had something like this back when I was picking them up on the farm. But we didn't. But what Atomic told me, and I think I learned more details on this when I actually went and visited him and met him face to face for the first time. I learned a little more about him and his experiences, and there was a place he was working. He may have told me the details of what kind of factory it was. I don't recall off the top of my head at the moment. But there was a Russian co-worker, and this is what just boggles my mind and is impressive to me. And I know I've mentioned it before in a couple videos I did on Atomic, when he passed. From every sound you would have heard from them, you'd think, well, Atomic sure doesn't sound very educated or whatever, but I think that man was a flippin' genius. He learned how to speak Russian just by being with a coworker that spoke it. And he told me that, he eventually became fluent. And I don't know that it was just the one coworker, there might have been several who spoke it and, provided him an opportunity to exercise or use it. But that's pretty rare. That gets mad respect from me, that someone's able to do that and maybe it was an environment where it could be done, but not all of us are gifted, that way to be able to, just pick up a second language when we're here in America and all we hear day by day is just good old English. Oh boy, I'm just realizing this is a lot of weight. So I don't know that I want to go back downhill again. Once I get uphill, I'm going to have to go side to side or something to be a little more careful. Yeah, these rocks have real weight, so nice to see them kind of fly in here. Although they kind of just congregate in the back. Oh, I still can't stop jumping when I hear that going off. But anyway, we are at the end of the 30-minute duration that you all have to sit here and listen to me, so I think I'm going to close the episode there. One more rock that'll fly in and let you all go free. Thank you so much for coming by to listen as we visit together and just play this wonderful map called Gelvin Valley. You all have a wonderful day, and I will see you again on the next one. Goodbye.